Because you've already been set up with the system in itself. The question is, what can we do about it? We talked about challenging things the moment we see them. Not just challenging things on the outside, but challenging things on the inside is how you change the world, ladies and gentlemen. And you start, of course, like the doctor said, with the people around you. Although I would say focus on your family first. You know, if I've learned anything, it's that individuals that are the closest to you are the people that we can't seem to reform. We have all these issues and we talk about the human rights of all these other countries in the world, and yet who are our biggest partners politically, militarily, wherever they are in the Middle East or in Latin America? These are the worst human rights abusers. We can't stop them from doing what they're doing. Why? Because we're helping them do what they do. Because we send our garbage there when it needs to be taken out. Because someone sends that person to a black...
Then I'm not the only one that's going to be against that wall. You're going to be against that wall. Plenty of you that are watching this program now, it don't matter if you black, white, brown, yellow, green, blue, you're against that wall too. Because the ironic thing is now, they're not looking for the black messiah. They're just looking for anybody that has something negative to say about the way that they make money. It doesn't matter if you're black or white or anything, or Christian, Muslim, Jewish. If you get in the way of their agenda, and when I say their agenda is focused around consolidating power. The world power, the global elite wants to consolidate power, consolidate wealth to the point that we all become dependent on them. They try to make anything that would make us independent seem ludicrous and irrational, and everything that makes us dependent and slave-like and drug addict behavior having, they encourage that.
Imagine if I'm a college professor, emeritus, Harvard. You know, I have wonderful ideas about the economy. They just so happen to help my friends that are themselves working at Goldman Sachs or somewhere else. You're a f***ing camera dude working for a show. But you know what? You've spent the last 20 years, excuse my language, researching, digging through books, reading the history of America, reading the history of the economic collapses that have occurred throughout civilizations through the passage of time. And you've amassed an incredible amount of knowledge, and you present that. Simply because I have more letters behind my name and I work for some fancy institution, people are going to believe me, and they'll go so far as to ridicule you, which is what happens in hip-hop. Doesn't matter how dope people are. Doesn't matter if they're incredibly skilled. I got more money than you, so I win.
I'm just kidding. It's still you, though. Fellas, I don't mean moves the problem like you leaning on heroin or some shit. No, you junkie ass motherfucker. We need you to take that needle out of your arm, take those stupid pills out of your mouth, and come back to us for a motherfucking revolution. We need that motherfucking here. That's right, G. You're supposed to drink that shit when you got a cold. Fuck yeah. Stupid.
Sometimes the difference is people can't hear me because I say it through hip hop, and no matter what the venue is, they'll still think hip hop, irresponsible, arrogant young people, or they'll hear you say something and they'll say, oh man, I love this guy, but he went crazy on peers, and I don't think that he, should represent the movement that way. At some point, you and I will only touch a fraction of the people that we need to speak to, and yet I think that what's important about it is to have so many diverse groups of individuals who have the same core message. What's behind the mask? You know what I mean? Don't show me what you have in the right hand when you play the old switch and grab. You know what I mean? This has a trajectory. At some point, we're going to get...
And that's what I'm saying. Whatever they're pushing, whatever the establishment wants, you can bet it's not good for the general public. I don't care what color you are. I mean, here...
Without due process. That's murder. The cops basically went in there and murdered him. Did he murder people? Absolutely. Was he wrong for that? Yes. Did they want him alive? No. Because if they got him alive and he stood trial, I think it would have been the end of it. I think that people would have been like, are you kidding me? Is this guy about to blow the lid on how fascist this system has become, on how people have been trained to think this way? And I know we always talk about Nazi Germany, but the Germans were not animals, Alex. They were human beings. They were conditioned. You know, when you read the stories of the SS officers that were given a puppy, you know what I mean, to have during their time in the academy.
And they had to kill it.
And the last order is shoot the puppy in the head. Unflinching, absolute loyalty, unquestioning to what they think is the republic, to what they think is what is supposed to be the...
And it was done by increments, just like we become so evil by increment. Mid-90s, when the decision was made that this hip-hop and rap's getting really popular, rap, was it called hip-hop then, and we want it to be gangster and destructive...
I saw that memo going around, yeah.
Oh, you saw the memo?
Yeah, they have a memo that's on the internet right now, not to interrupt you, where that is actually sent out. And they don't have the person's name attached to it. They don't have anything. But there's a memo that floats around the industry that discusses that. I tell people, listen, entertainment can be used for several different things. This is entertainment, yet you're using entertainment to inform people. You can use entertainment to pacify people, to placate them, to fool them, to keep them so focused on this that they don't understand you're taking this. For example, what would the United States be without the World Series, without the Super Bowl, without the NBA Finals? Those Roman Colosseums.
And it's empty.
Those Roman, and I'm not saying, I love basketball, I love football. Well, but when people have always tried to pull the Marxist card with me, I've said, you know what, the difference is between you and me is I've actually read that book because I had to study it to understand how
pretty sophisticated.
How much control
I've read it too.
Wanted over a society. And when I was done with that, I said to myself, wow, it reminds me, and you mentioned it before, the great KRS-One who said, there's no such thing as a government. It's just people who rule over other people. And they design these little fancy systems so it looks like they're bringing freedom or they're bringing order. And America, the sad part is we are so cynical right now that I know people who are lovers of democracy that say, I'd rather see a king that could get something done and balance a budget than a president that can't do anything.
The system makes it worse and worse.
And that's where they want us to be.
Here's the key.
If you're not part of this society, then how are you even going to sit there and pass judgment or claim that you want to help it or claim that you're even part of America? You're either part of this or you're not. The massive amount of corporations that make money off this country want their business exported from here, and yet they want to sell to people from here. They don't want to pay their fair share of what it costs to run this country, what it costs for the military to back up those areas where they're taking natural resources out of, but they want all the benefits of it. In other words, they want to have sex with America, but they don't want to marry her. They're whoring her out. And I have no respect for those type of people, whether they come from the left, whether they come from the right. And unfortunately, I tell people, what you're going to have to deal with now, Alex, is a whole lot of frauds coming into the libertarian movement. Frauds, right? How about the fact that this country, this republic,
was born in blood,
has only had 20 years of peace since its inception? Now, I would like to be able to blame this or blame something else, but I think that that's a very nearsighted solution. Just to look at it, yes, this...
No, we have a history of piracy.
This does kill people. Yes, absolutely. But so did Greek fire. So did a whole lot of other things that people invented and used. So did diseases that were given to indigenous people purposefully. One of the first examples of genetic warfare against indigenous people by Europeans.
That's in the British manual.
And I think, thank you for pointing that out, because this is the point that I'm trying to make. We won't have that critical discussion about how violent our government is and how violent our society is. Blaming it on this is the easiest way out. It prevents you from looking inward and saying, what have I become complicit to in America?
Well, let me say this, because it's entertaining.
When people say to me, oh, Alex Jones, you mean the guy who talks like the Micro Machine Man and puts all these dates and stuff into it? I say, listen, if you slow down what he's saying and you look literally one sentence by one sentence, you have 200 things to research within the span of that. And I think that sometimes what would benefit you is to slow it down and say, hey, man, you know what? Today we're just going to deal with this.
No, I agree, but here's the problem. the way my brain works, I think most people's actually work this way, is that
I love when people start like that. The problem is the way my brain works.
Well, there's like 100 different, in fact, what people think I'm talking fast, that's like 1/100th.
Right.
Because when I see something, I know all the connections and how it integrates, because I've read all the establishment publications, and then I know the they're thinking like in 3-level chess. The general public's playing checkers.
Right.
And they want to keep us in a checkers level, and that's what's so frustrating, is that I can see their end game. But listen, we talked for about 5 minutes.
Anything else in the story. When you talk about love and losing people, you know, when you love someone, you see yourself as the best that you'll ever be through their eyes. You see yourself as the strongest, as the prettiest or the most handsome, you know. The person believes in you so much, you believe in yourself. And that's why you feel like you're leaving a part of yourself when you leave that person. Because technically you are. You're leaving what you see yourself as. The trick is to love yourself someday so much that you actually don't need someone else to justify what you are or who you are, but someone that complements who you are, someone that's willing to grow with you. And if you can't find someone like that, well, then welcome to the rest of the world.
Time and time again is exactly what I said before. I feel bad having to repeat it again and again, but I want to get into people's minds. They begin to understand that corporations will put the profit margin and will put making money from billionaires over the lives and the quality of life of foreign citizens. And I don't think it's crazy for people to fight against that. You're not a communist for fighting against that. In fact, you resemble the greatest amount of spirit that any American has ever had, who fought for his rights and his dignity. And it's ironic because here in this country, the profit margin is put before people's lives. Even in the food that we eat. You know, these GMO, they don't want their foods labeled. If you're so proud of something, why don't you want it to have your stamp of approval on it?
That's right. But in Europe, they do label foods with GMOs.
But I think it's an embarrassment, which is why I always scoffed at the accusations of Marxism or communism. I'm like, look, dude, at the same time that I understand how that system functions, I understand how this system functions as well. You know, I look at those things as being part of the building blocks of humanity. There are stages of evolution that we're going through. And unfortunately, people are making too much money off of this stage of evolution of capitalism to stop and get off it and take us to the next level. Because if we're still here in 100 years, then we basically put the nail in the coffin for humanity. To the point where we can't speak about healthy food without being persecuted by the companies that sell food that's bad for you. They're making too much money selling processed stuff that is going to be proven to give people cancer in order to stop and being taken off the market.
How do you think that can...
But even if you go to a rally, and this is not a criticism of activism by any means, only a helpful hand to educate more people and make them understand that, look, even if we do 100,000, 500,000 people in front of Washington protesting a war, at the end of the day, what did we do? We spent a lot of gas money getting there. We helped the local economy by buying all that food that we did when we went there. And what did we really achieve? Moving people from one place to another. We're not really speaking their language. Their language is money, you know? And what they do over and over is take a action that occurs outside of this country, and while the public is completely focused on that, begin to reorganize what's happening here in America with the Patriot Act, with going after people who have some sort of criticism of America, with discrediting individuals who would even question the smallest concern that they have in terms of what the government's doing behind times. Whether we choose to realize it or not, we have more things in common than we do apart. We all want the same things, and yet there are people who are in charge of our government who aren't satisfied with us wanting the same things. And by the same things, I don't mean the same shirt to wear. I don't mean the American exaggeration of what socialism or communism is. I don't believe that we should give in to one standard or another. I think it should be measured based upon what a population decides and not have some controlling interest from a foreign country or a foreign corporation, because all corporations are foreign, really. They deal with a small, tiny island nation of people who decide things for others. I grew this passion because of that desire to make a connection between one and the other. And the more it became clearer and clearer how one affected the other, the more I decided to dig deeper and deeper into it. And I love when I'm proved wrong, and I love putting my ideas out there and having them debated, because I feel like it gives me a chance to grow personally.